Bonjour. My name is Rawson and I'm a French professor at Concordia College, and it is my pleasure to talk to you today about the history and legends of Brittany, France, La Bretagne. And I'm making this video for the 2021 Celtic Festival. It is virtual this year, and I think Moorhead Parks and the Yumcum Center have put on a really cool event. So I hope that you can, navigate to their website and watch some of the other videos and celebrate Celtic culture with us, even in this virtual format due to the pandemic. So when I proposed talking, I lived in Bretagne the longest, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for it. And I wanted to share with you all a little bit about the Breton people. And they have a reputation for being quite rebellious and the only region to resist the Roman invasion. And so I thought I would share with you just a few stories and some history about the Breton people and the legends that make them famous today. Made them famous, and they're still famous today. This is a picture here of Vercingetorix, who is a hero and a symbol of France, even though he was not French, he was Celtic. And this is the scene of, it's recreated in a famous painting where he throws his weapons at the feet of Caesar. Caesar is in red there, and surrenders but remains defiant and proud. And that's a great symbol for the French people. So there's a little bit about me if you're interested, and I love to teach with technology. I'm involved in a couple different programs, but like I said earlier, Brittany, France is where I've spent the most time, and I miss it so much. So let's get into the history. Well, first of all, I guess I should say, when I tell people that I'm at the Celtic Festival and I'm a French professor, their first response is, "What?" And so maybe you didn't realize that Brittany is one of the 7 Celtic nations. This is their flag right there, the Gwenhadou, and it's in France. And so La Bretagne in French, Braz in Breton. You'll have to forgive my pronunciation, but Tibraz is what they say in Breton for Brittany. And they're very, very proud of their Celtic heritage and celebrate it in so many ways on a regular basis. So we are happy to be included in the 7 Celtic nations. So here's where Bretagne is on the map of France, kind of that western little branch sticking out there. And Rennes was not always part of Brittany. They actually extended Brittany a little farther east, and picked a capital that was not some of the heart of Brittany, wasn't as the strong rebellious Celtic people, so that they'd be a little more manageable. But we're going to get to that in a moment. So first of all, the Celtic peoples, there's many different dates about when they might have been in this area, and many of my slides are in French since I'm usually teaching in French, but I will talk to you in English. But you can see here that 6000 BCE, there were Celtic people all across Europe, and this region here, right, that's France today, and so most of France today was Celtic at a certain point. And their religion, they were Druids. There was a lot involving nature. There are some very famous, even today, Druidic wells, and they've mostly been covered over by Catholic churches, but the Catholic Church was pretty smart, and they built the churches over the wells because they knew the Celtic people would be coming to worship, and then eventually that's how they got them convinced to become Christians and Catholic. Some of the different artifacts that have been found around Brittany and the Mediterranean basin, showing the religions and some of the artwork from the Druids and the Celtic people. So this was some historical Brittany with the different tribes. There were, I think, as many as 50 different tribes in France, and that's all across France. But you can see here, even just in Brittany, there's kind of a patchwork of different groups. They did not all get along, and so it really was the Romans that's going to bring them together. Another really amazing, I think, well, it's a World Heritage Site that you find in Brittany, is Karnak. And these are monoliths that were, it's huge, bigger than Stonehenge. 10,000 of these stones um, were in existence at 4,500 BCE, and they are in geometrical parallel lines. Each one of those menhirs is over 2 meters tall, and that's quite tall. I'm 5'7", and it's, much taller than I am. I think it's over 6 feet. Um, and they don't know how they did this. So the technology involved in making these and transporting, where they came from, where the mines were, where they came from, how they got here, we don't know. And so it is the oldest monument in Europe made by humans. Yeah, 6 feet, 6.74 inches tall, roughly, each of these. So quite tall. And we don't know how they did it. So it really is a mystery. But the oldest monument in Europe made by humans, and they don't know why. So lots of mysteries and lots of ideas that are kind of put out there, but it's really stunning. And you can, at least at one point, I'm not sure if it's still open, but you could go out there and walk among the stones. And it's pretty amazing to see, 4,000 BCE, the cooperation and the level of technology and the intelligence that must have gone into developing a site like this. 10,000 of these stones. Stunning. Must see visit. So here's another picture of the biggest tribes and kind of where they were. Gali is Gaul. That's the name the Romans are going to give to the area that becomes France today. And you can see some of the other Celtic nations represented here. So here you go. This is what Gaul looked like right before the Romans invaded. And this is roughly, modern France. You can probably see if you went back to the first slide that I had. And then the Brittany region is that purple area. They're going to remain outside of Roman invasion the longest. So this is what it looks like with all of these different tribes, and they're fighting for power between each other until the Romans attack. And the Romans attacked because the Celtic people were actually incredibly strong, very rich, very wealthy. They were trading with the Romans, and they were selling weapons and wheat to the Romans. The Romans were giving them wine and oil, maybe necessities of life, but I like to think that those are luxuries. The Romans really depended on them. The Gaulois went down into Rome and pillaged their city and won in Rome. That did not sit well with the Romans, and so the Romans slowly started to invade first, kind of in the south of France, the parts that are touching, Italy and Spain, and then eventually they tried to start working their way over. They really were, in my French, trained opinion, jealous of the wealth that you have happening in Gaul. And you can see on this map, Paris, the Parisi tribes were Celtic tribes there. That's where the name Paris comes from. So the Celtic influence is really all over France, not just Brittany. Of course, this is, the Roman invasion is 52, starts in 58, goes to 52 BCE. And so the Romans invade, and the tribes are, now starting to come together to fight the Romans. Vercingetorix is named king of his tribe, and he wins a battle against the Legion, which is a big deal. And so eventually the tribes all come together and they elect him to be the king of all the Gaulois. So he unites the Gaulois tribes, and eventually, though, it is the Roman Legion. The Gaulois go to Alesia, and that's the top of the mountain. So the Gaulois are up here, and they have a fortification, And this is kind of their last holdout. And look at what Caesar does. Caesar builds 2 lines of barricades and all of these towers. He has essentially, iron crosses, hidden trenches that he digs. He hides tree trunks in the trenches, fills them with water. A place that the Gaulois had picked for a strategic military advantage. There's mountains on all 3 sides, all these rivers. The legion was just so big, they surrounded him and starved him out. So eventually, that's why Vercingetorix had to go back and had to surrender. And so he's taken prisoner, marched into Rome, and killed in a ceremony celebrating Caesar's glory. So at this point, all of France, all of Gaul at the time falls. This is another scene of Vercingetorix. Caesar is in red way, way at the back, and Vercingetorix is sort of in gold and shining because he was a symbol, even at this point of French resistance and rebellion and la résistance and pride. One of their symbols is the coq gaulois, the Gaulish rooster, and Vercingetorix kind of reminds me about that in the best ways, right? Very proud, and so even in his defeat, he remains a hero. And he is Gaulois, he is Celtic. This is before France, but even today, the French tend to regard Vercingetorix as a hero. So these stories are commemorated, maybe you've heard of Asterix and Obelix. If you're looking for a good read, or there are tons of great videos. They've made these cartoon characters. This is my favorite video, Asterix and Obelix Mission Cléopâtre. It's very funny. Depardieu is one of the actors in it. Lots of humor, but essentially Asterix is the little guy, Obelix is the bigger guy there, and people say Asterix is modeled off of Vercingetorix, and the Breton people do not give in to Caesar, and so here you have Asterix and Obelix are Breton, and people come to them to say, help us fight the Romans. They go to Egypt, and so that's the mission Cleopatra. They go to Egypt to help the Egyptians, stand up to the Romans, and they have magic potions and some stereotypical images of Celtic druidic people, but in good humor and really pride. So you can see here after 52, Brittany is this tiny little corner, right? They don't give in. And so most of the rest of France and Gaul are conquered by the Romans, but there are a few pockets, and Brittany is the strongest one, is going to remain Celtic and independent the longest. Let's jump in time a little bit to William the Conqueror in 1066. He was Norman. Normandy is kind of right next to Brittany, right here. If you can see my mouse, right there is sort of Normandy, and he. It's a long story, commemorated in this tapestry that's quite spectacular in the city of Bayeux still today, dates from this time period. William the Conqueror's wife, Mathilde, had it commissioned, and it retells the whole story of Harold, taking the power when Edouard, the King of England, dies. He had chosen William to be his successor. Eventually, it's the Battle of Hastings. But what that does is it establishes kind of a French presence. This is the French perspective in England, and some issues with succession, but also the French language and sort of this back and forth, where there's a piece of France and England, or a piece of England and France, depending on your perspective. That's going to be important in a moment when we come back to Brittany. So just remember this for a second here. Well, I guess right now I jump in the interest of time from 1066. The reason why I wanted to mention William the Conqueror is because of the Lancelot legends and the Knights of the Round Table. Arthur, Merlin, Viviane, Guinevere, all of those famous people that you've probably heard of, stories becoming very popular in the 4th and 5th centuries. We associate them, at least I used to, with England. And actually, Merlin's forest is in Brittany. And so Brocéliande is the name of his forest in French. This is a picture of the Devil's Tree, and it is in the middle of Brittany. And so it that connection, the reason why, I think Americans think it's in England is because, of that Norman presence on both sides of the channel. So um, here we have the Celtic influence in the 5th century. And you can see that it's still there, even though technically, these are now Roman peoples, and then they're going to be invaded by the Frankish, several different Germanic tribes, but the Frankish group is the one that's going to win with Clovis. They're going to become France. But you have this juxtaposition of the Germanic tribes and the Celtic culture that sort of marry to become what are today the French people. So let's jump forward again to 1477. So we're going to jump forward almost 1,000 years. You can see the Duchy of Brittany, the Duché de Bretagne, different color because it really is still staying independent from the rest of France. So, they have that Breton spirit. They are not accepting the French monarchy. They did not accept the Roman rule. They continued to stand out. And there are wars between Brittany and France, of course. And many times the wars confirm Breton rights rather than, them giving in. Eventually, of course, we probably know how this story ends. Brittany does become part of France fully in 1491 when Anne de Bretagne is married to Charles VII. He was 21 years old. She was 14 on the day of their marriage, and it really was to bring Brittany under the crown in a more official, more aligned way that they have been resisting since, 6000 BCE. They were really so proud having Brittany as part of the French royaume was such a big coup that they actually incorporated the Breton symbol into the official French symbol. So 1532 is when it's official. Brittany is part of France. And you can see in royal portraits, from that point on, the inside of that's Louis XIV, the inside of Louis XIV's royal robe, that's ermine, and that was the symbol of Brittany. And so they incorporated Breton symbols everywhere because finally capturing and having Brittany was that important to the French. And they don't. The fleur de lis is a French symbol, forever, right? They don't incorporate any of the other, it was pretty common under feudalism that each duke and each, comte had their own kind of area. They don't incorporate any of the other symbols. But when Brittany became part of France, its symbol became incorporated into the royal symbol for France. And I think that's pretty neat. So they're now unified, but still independent. When I was living there, these symbols of the Gwen Hadu and, Tibres were all over. And they would say, they would talk about how proud they were of their heritage and their independence. So Tibres, you can see the ermine kind of symbol there where we would have the stars, and then the stripes are for the Celtic nations that sort of were the biggest and most dominant and lasted the longest, is my understanding. All of this is kind of my perspective as somebody who's lived there and studied the history a bit. So this is some traditional Breton dress, the lace. They're very famous for the lace. It's quite beautiful. They are famous for fishing, for being very rugged and solid. It's not the sandy beaches, and the warm weather. It is, can be a difficult life, but it is so beautiful. This is Brocéliande in a more recent picture. So this is Merlin's forest again, but a little more recently. There's the Devil's Tree a little more recently. There's such a, as I've said more than once, a strong Celtic presence, really powerful. One of the things I love, they have lots of stories, because life was hard and they are living in sort of the conditions and the brutal weather and, off of the land. It's one of the things I find really interesting. I have a book of Breton folklore and mythology. There's lots of interactions with spirits or the devil or God, coming down to help the Breton people. And the devil is sometimes good. And that's really rare as I understand it. So there are a couple stories when the devil will actually help people. Sometimes he's the trickster, sometimes he's leading people astray, but sometimes he was actually helping people. And so that's something that is unique to the Breton mythology, at least as far as I've studied. Here's a picture of Rennes. That's the city that I lived in, and most of the old town burned down in the 17th century, but there are still pieces that remain, and it's spectacular. Place de la Mairie, so one of the city centers in Rennes. There's still lots of remnants of the Catholic influence and many important Catholic churches. Anne de Bretagne is their patron saint. And so I hope I've given you a little bit about the history of the Bretons and their rebellious spirit. I wanted to share with you before I left a little bit about their cooking, because don't we all love some good cuisine? So there is the phare breton, which is that dish on the bottom left. Really, really yummy. Lots of fish you can imagine because of the coast. Huître de Cancale. My landlord took me to eat huître from Cancale once and said they were the best in the whole world, and it was a pretty amazing experience. So many beautiful cities, so many beautiful memories, not enough time. Moule frites, so you can see the seafood influence. Mussels and fries, really yummy. Oh, huître, if I didn't say, oysters. Crêpes and galettes, they are, famous all across France, but my friends in Brittany told me they're from Brittany, and there's a difference. So the galette is the one on the left. They're a savory batter that's made with blé noir or blé sarrasin, so it's a dark flour that you have there. And on the right, made with white flour, are the more traditional crêpe that we think of in the United States, right? And so in the US, we tend to just have one batter that we use for everything. But really, in Brittany at least, they have two. And so you would use the blé sarrasin for the savory crêpe, and then you would use the white flour for buckwheat. That's the word I was looking for. Buckwheat flour for the savory crêpe, and then you'd use the white flour for the sweet one. And it's a whole meal, and you can just go into any sort of bakery and buy them in Bretagne, and they love, that's a ham and cheese and egg galette on the left, and they would cook the crêpe on these big round pans, and then put the egg on top, and the heat would sort of cook the egg, and then of course you can put any fillings inside. So I'm hoping to make another video for you all soon where my family and I will make some of the sweet crêpe with Nutella and strawberries and whipped cream and chocolate sauce and sugar, butter, anything you like. Some people compare them to the Norwegian lefse or the American pancakes. Fair comparison, but they're very, very thin and very yummy and special to me. This is my favorite. I don't pronounce it 100% right, but Quin Amon is what I try to say. It's Breton, and it means butter cake, and it is butter cake, and it is so amazingly delicious. There's a market in Rennes every weekend, and I would go and buy these, homemade from these little tiny artisanal shops that would come to sell these at market, and they are just one of the best things I've ever had in my life. Not at all healthy, but so worth it. Bretagne, of course, famous as well for caramel and sea salt. And so the caramels are usually have a few grains of sea salt added in, and then maybe you've seen the fleur de sel Guérande that's from Brittany, and it's harvested from the seas there. So a little tour of some of the gastronomie Bretagne to get your taste buds working this morning or evening whenever you're watching this video. I thought it would be neat to end with this video called La Bretagne, Terre de Légende, Brittany, the Land of Legends, by Mathieu Maxime Prod. I think Prod there stands for Productions. If you go to YouTube and type in those words, La Bretagne, terre de légende, or Mathieu Maxime, Prod, you should be able to find it. He's got a video channel, and this video is spectacular. I think you're going to love it. And you'll get to see, hear some wonderful music, see some amazing photos of this wonderful region. So enjoy. Wow. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for taking this trip down memory lane with me, and I hope you saw something that interested you and makes you maybe want to learn more about Brittany, or maybe when this pandemic is over, actually go there someday. I've enjoyed remembering many fond moments and sharing some of my experiences, and at a time that was very important to my life and a place that I care about deeply. So merci beaucoup, and au revoir, and bonne continuation. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and enjoy the Celtic Festival.